through marriage. And I was feeling like I kind of did the journey by myself. And so a lot of my passion has been based around helping other moms to not do the journey by themselves. And so growing up and having my kids, I had no confidence in myself, but I didn't really know what that word meant. I remember I was always throwing around like, I need to build my self-esteem. I need to build my
Mm,
self-esteem. I constantly criticized my body. I criticized who I was and where I was in my success in life. And so, although I loved my children and I love my husband very much, I was really, really unhappy. And I could
mm,
never put my finger on it because I had done different courses and I did different programs that's building your confidence and trying to create a better life. And nothing felt like it was working for me. And so I didn't build a lot of friends because I had no confidence in who I was.
mm, mhm,
So I was afraid to put myself out there. I was afraid I wasn't going to fit in. And I always thought other moms were better than me. Like
mm.
other moms are more spiritual than me. Other moms are more successful than me. Other moms are prettier than me. And so I really just did my journey alone. So about 4 years ago, I was sitting in my living room, kind of having a little mini meltdown. My 40s was coming up and I was freaking out about how nothing had changed, how I
Mm.
still couldn't stand my body, how I was still really overweight and unhealthy. And I was sitting there thinking, like, what's the point of doing anything else if nothing's ever going to change, right? You've probably had that moment where you're thinking, like, what's the point if I'm almost 40 and nothing's changed now? And so sitting there in this moment, reflecting on everything I had done, I had this thought. Where you've heard a saying a lot of times, you've probably heard the saying and you think it's really clever, but it never really sunk in before. And it was the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results.
Yes.
And yeah, and up to that point, it's exactly what I had been doing. I always tell people it's like drinking all different types of brand of water, but it's still water. So that's kind of what I had been doing. But there's excitement in realizing that. I had this moment where I started getting this kind of excitement through me where you're scared but excited, that
Mm,
heat moving through your belly and through your chest. And I started saying, man, I have been doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. And I'm tired of it. And I had this little breakthrough right there, no books, no anything at that moment, this fed up breakthrough that I was going to start doing whatever it took to start getting healthy and loving my life. Not just for me, but to be that better example for my kids, even though they were almost grown, and my
Yeah.
grandkids. So on that day, I started picking up every book, every course, every YouTube channel of inspirational leaders like Lisa Nichols, and said, I am going to do whatever it takes to figure out what is really going on and connect with myself. And that's what I did. So through that, I started growing, finding a passion for life, losing weight, falling in love with fitness, and in that developed my passion, learning that my purpose was to help other moms do the same thing, to help other moms figure out, why do I feel this way about myself? What can I do to change it? And then start falling in love with life and partially through fitness. And here I am today now coaching moms on becoming fit, but not just fit in body, but also in mind.
Oh, and thank goodness you are here because,
Thanks.
oh my gosh, so many people need this. Thank you so much for sharing that story.
Welcome.
As you were sharing your story, I mean, I felt that in my bones, like chills,
Yeah.
like teary eyes. Because I mean, unless we're just two little weirdos here sitting having a conversation, I do not think we are alone. I think,
No.
I have so many conversations with women in my own practice, and it seems like this is everybody's story,
Yeah.
and that it doesn't get talked about enough. And I'm curious what you think, like, how does this happen? Why do most women struggle with this not good enough and comparing ourselves to others? Like you had mentioned in your journey, you other moms everything better than you. Where do you
Yeah.
think that comes from?
I think it's not to sound cliche that we say that everything starts in childhood, but I think for
Mhm.
women, it really does start in our childhood. Our belief from what we see around us of what a perfect mom is and what a
Yeah.
perfect wife is. And in these movies and in these magazines, there's these perfect moms that have it together and they never get upset with their kids and they go to the gym every day and they're always happy. And
Mhm.
so we feel guilty to say I'm unhappy. We
Mhm.
feel like that means that we're not loving our kids enough. It means that we're not loving our life enough, that we're not grateful for just being here. And
Mhm.
then we think that other moms have it all figured out. And so we feel ashamed to
Mhm.
say, I'm struggling. I was talking to some women in my group the other day, and that's what they were saying. They said, I'm known as the helper. We are, as women, are known as helpers and nurturers.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we feel like we're not doing our job or we're not loving our job enough if we're having any struggle, if we need to ask for help. And so we put this excessive expectation on ourselves of what we should look like and how happy we should be and how
Yeah.
we should feel. And we don't know how to go from there. So we just kind of start faking that that's how we really feel.
Mm. Yeah, I think that you are spot on. I had I remember when I was little, and I don't know how old I was. I'm going to guess it was probably like 7, 8, somewhere around there. And I was at this like junior jazzercise class with one of my best friends at the time. And she was just so thin, like stick thin. And I was like normal. I was a petite normal, but she was like really thin. And after class, we were, just playing around. I did a cartwheel, and this other little tiny girl came up to me and said, "You're too big to do that."
Yeah.
And I remember just feeling like so ashamed and like, what? And I honestly think that that was the moment that set me up for a lifetime of body image issues.
Yeah.
And I can remember that moment so clearly, and just comparing myself, like, am I bigger than this person? Am I bigger than this person? And I mean, how crazy is that?
Yeah.
Do you have a moment in your life? I mean, I would assume not every woman knows exactly where this came from, and I kind of feel like I do, but I'm curious about
Yeah.
you and your experience, if you have an experience like similar to that.
So I'm adopted and I'm adopted
Okay.
into a family of 12 siblings. There's 6 girls and 6 of us boys.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and so when you first get adopted into a family, it's kind of like a bunch of strangers because they don't know you. So I remember my
Yeah.
sister, I was probably 5th grade, 85 pounds, and my sister and she was about 8 months younger than me, my adoptive sister. And I remember her looking at me and telling me that we both weigh the same, but at least I don't look fat. And that stuck with me. And it wasn't
Oh.
the first time that I had been told I was fat, but I
Mhm.
do remember the first time I was told I was fat because I didn't think anything of it. Because the first time you hear it, sometimes you kind of brush it off. You're not aware that it's a negative
Mm.
thing, but
Yeah.
after you've heard it a few times, you start realizing, oh, this is something against my body. And all of a sudden I started like sucking my stomach in,
Yep.
standing up taller just
Mm.
from one person saying, at least I don't look fat.
Mm.
So,
Isn't
and
that amazing?
yeah,
Oh, I just can only imagine the experiences of other women, and gosh, how cool would it be to have a conversation of like sharing these stories and realizing how effed up they are and just shedding them.
yeah,
So let me ask you, how do you think we shed these stories? Can you give us a little bit of maybe your experience or the tools that you use to kind of get out of this story, and like some steps to really start loving ourselves more no matter what we look like?
yeah. Well, I have a couple things that I do. One is about our thoughts, because what's
Yeah.
really bombarding us every day when we start thinking negative thoughts about ourselves. I remember I would pass the mirror. I could never pass the mirror without going, ugh, like
Mm.
look at this stretch mark or look at this tummy pudge. Every time I passed the mirror, I'd say something negative. What started flipping for me was when I started learning to acknowledge my thoughts, because they become a habit that we don't even realize that we're doing,
Right.
right? We're just constantly saying negative things like it's normal.
Mhm.
And so it is normal to have negative thoughts sometimes, but what we do with the thought is what we can change. And so I started catching myself really fast when I was saying that. First, I started saying, is what I'm saying a fact? because half the time what we're saying about ourselves, like I'm the fattest person in the world or the ugliest person in the world. And you're like, is that really a fact? What evidence do you have on that? But learning that I can acknowledge a thought, but that I don't have to believe it or receive it or sit on it. So I'd
Mm,
acknowledge that thought. And then I would just say something like, thanks, mind, kind of sarcastically, just acknowledge that that thought doesn't have to be a part of me. And then flip the script. I started learning to say things positive about myself and take the focus away from my body. What are good qualities about myself that's not about my body? Because we do get so focused on our body that that starts becoming everything to us, right? Like
right.
what size we are, how clear our skin is, what chest size we have. It starts becoming about that instead of all the other amazing qualities that we have. So that's kind of where I start flipping the script. Is this a fact? And then saying something positive, not fake positive. I'm
Yeah.
not a fake it or make till you make it kind of person. I want a real life change, you know. But what is something really good about myself that I can say, taking the focus away from my body, which is my house? You know,
Mm,
I'm not my body.
mhm.
Realizing I'm not my body's my house.
Right. Yeah, I find it so interesting. And, I am absolutely 100% guilty of this too. And it's something that I've been working on for a very long time. But how much worth we put on our physical appearance.
Yeah.
And one of the things, it sounds like you teach this as well, but I I think about how miserable we will be when we're like, in our 70s and 80s, and actually, well before that too, when all of this that we're working on so hard goes away. And so
Exactly.
I think you have an amazing point right here where you have to train yourself to interrupt those thought patterns so that we can see our worth, and it has nothing to do with beauty.
Yeah.
We're going to end up like really old and miserable
Yeah.
women if we don't stop that.
Exactly. And that's where I was telling you kind of led to my little bit of my meltdown was I was so scared of getting older. I
Yeah.
was like, saw this creeping up and
Yeah.
I saw me being this just uncomfortable, bitter woman. And I was like, I need to start changing to learn to age gracefully by loving myself, accepting myself 100%,
Yeah.
no matter what, which doesn't mean that I'm being complacent. It doesn't mean that I'm not working to create my best life. We're doing that though, so that we feel joy and happiness, not
Mhm.
so that we look better necessarily, but learning to thank our body for all that. Our body does so many amazing
Mm.
things for us,
Right.
but we're constantly putting it down for not being perfect
Right.
and giving ourselves grace when we are negative instead of beating ourselves up for being negative, but saying, where can I start changing this conversation in my head that I'm having with myself, which, like we were saying, starts by identifying where the conversation even started. Like,
Right.
where did it even start? What got me thinking that I need to be a size 2 or a size 0 or this size chest or this kind of hips? Like, what got me even thinking that that's what I need instead of appreciating that we were made perfectly imperfect, perfectly
Right.
imperfect. And we
Right.
don't want a bunch of copycats of clones of everyone looking the
I
same.
I know, I was just gonna say, can you imagine if we just all looked the same and
Yeah.
how boring the world would be?
Yeah, it wouldn't be beautiful anymore because it would
No.
all be the same. And so thanking your body every day, when you do a gratitude journal, let that be something you're doing is thanking your body, whether you've carried babies or that it hugs people, all the amazing that you build things with your hands, all the amazing things that your body does has nothing to do with how you look.
Absolutely. And that negative self-talk really does break down your body on a physical level. So
It
that is
does.
amazing advice. So what do you think true self-love is? And why do you think it's important? And more importantly, how do we get there? What
Yeah.
do we do? How do we deal with all of this?
I love that question. So, true self love to me, I believe, is when we accept ourselves 100%, 100% as we are. And that's where I tell people, like, I used to focus so much on trying to build my self esteem,
Mhm.
change the belief I have in myself around all areas. And when I decided to learn to scrap the whole term self esteem and instead focus on learning self-acceptance to love myself unconditionally 100%, which means you love yourself as much when you're here as
Mhm.
when you're here, whether it's in your
Mhm.
weight, in your career, with your children, wherever it's at, you're loving yourself just as much here as there. And the biggest thing, and most of you guys will probably agree with me, probably the biggest thing that holds us back from self-acceptance is comparison. Is we
Yeah.
compare ourselves to other, especially moms, other moms that we think have it all together, because we
Mhm.
don't see what's going on in people's houses. We see social media. So
Yeah.
we see what we think is happening in someone else's life, their perfect home and their perfect kids and their
Right.
perfect job. And so comparison, learning ways to stop comparing ourselves and use other women, other mothers as inspiration instead of comparison.
Oh, amazing.
So yeah, someone else is fit, instead of saying, "Oh my gosh, they look so much better than me." Say, "Girl, what did you do to get so fit? Like, what are you doing?" Because we forget that we're supposed to be learning from each other. And instead of comparing, instead we compare and we condemn and we shame other people because we feel bad, instead of saying, what are you doing to get that house? What are you doing with your kid that helps you stay patient? What are you doing to get to that fit level? And using it as inspiration to learn from them. And others will learn from you as well. But comparison, yeah, it's a joy thief.
Oh
It
gosh.
is a joy thief.
Yeah.
And it takes away us loving ourselves because we believe that other people are better than ourselves. So that's the number one thing I would say. And then, of course, investing in you. And
Yeah.
that's another one. Women, moms, but women in general, we feel guilty to invest in ourselves.
Mm.
We feel like we're not worth it, or we need to take care of other people, instead of realizing that taking care of ourselves is taking care of other people. Taking care of
Absolutely.
ourselves is taking care of other people.
Absolutely. I mean, how do we get women to realize that? I have this conversation all the time where it's you really hit it right there. They think that taking time away to whatever it is, it could be, when I talk to people about like meditation, oh, I don't
Yeah.
have time, I have to do this, I have my kids. And it's just, there's so many reasons, we all have our own reasons why we don't or do something.
Yeah.
And I think that the excuse, and it is an excuse, I'm going to just say it, whether or
Yeah.
not you think it is
Yeah.
or it's it is or isn't, it really is an excuse. And the best thing we can do is to really work on ourselves first.
Yeah.
So I think it's just really an important piece of the
Yeah.
whole self-love, and the whole thing is tied up in what we do for ourselves. How we can show up for ourselves is how we're going to show up for other people in
Yeah.
our life.
Yeah. I tell moms, think about your daughters or your sisters or your mothers. What would you tell them? Like if they were taking some time to take care of themselves,
Mhm.
would you tell them that they were being selfish to take care of themselves? Would you tell them that they don't deserve it? And the same as how we talk to ourselves. Would you talk to your daughter that way, or would you want your daughter to talk to themselves that way? And so if we look at it from that perspective, what would we want our daughter to do, especially as a mother? What would we want her to do to take care of herself? And do we deserve less than what we'd want our daughter to have for themselves? So we start separating ourselves from everybody else. Like our circumstance is different, and for some reason we're not worthy, for some reason we're not worth it, but we don't think that about other people. So if we start getting in the mindset of what do we want for the ladies in our life, for the other
Mhm.
women in our life, people in general, but we're talking about us girls, then we can maybe start shifting our mindset a little bit around, how would I tell other women to take care of themselves? And that's exactly how I should take care of myself.
Beautiful. I love that answer. So, kind of, I mean, it's not totally on that topic, but what it brought to my mind is the aspect of fitness and exercise.
Yeah.
Uh, when we're talking about, these excuses and time management and what do other people do to take care of themselves, like the first thing that comes into my head are like diet and nutrition, or nutrition and exercise.
Yeah.
And so, what would you say to somebody? I bet you get this a lot because I know I do. People don't have time to exercise.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear that a lot. I was one of them, like raise your hands, put it in the comments if that's you, because I definitely was one of those people. I remember getting so mad at my sister-in-law because she would be like, you have plenty of time, you can fit it in. And I was like, she doesn't understand. She doesn't get it that I'm working. She doesn't get that I have 5 kids at home. She doesn't get that my life is so busy and that my job was physical. But really, when I decided to start working out, when I decided to make that a priority, I found time. But yeah, I found time. But what I try to tell moms and women, when you're first starting out, we put so much pressure on, like, I don't have time to go to the gym. I don't have time to work out an hour of a day. And isn't it better to work out for 5 minutes a day? If that's all you did, then not at all. Like and people say, well, Becky, is 5 minutes enough time? And I always say this to them. I'm like, get down in a plank and try to plank for 5 minutes. If you try to plank for 5 minutes, you will see how long 5 minutes is. So 5 minutes of controlled, effective exercise. Now, I'm not saying only work out for 5 minutes every day. When you have more time, but on those days when you have sports and you're running the kids around, 5 minutes is better than nothing. So start somewhere. That's what I always say. Even if it's just going on a walk for 10 minutes every other day, and then every other day doing 5 minutes of squats or planks or jumping jacks. It doesn't have to be massive. It doesn't have to be massive in the beginning.
Mhm.
That's where we start sabotaging ourselves again with that excessive expectation right out of the gate. I'm going to go from not working out to like bodybuilder, instead of
Right.
taking baby steps into fitness.
I think that's a great point, because I think that somehow in the back of our head, we think of like working out as an hour-long
Yeah,
thing. And a lot of times it is. Like if you're going to
it
go
is.
to a class or whatnot, it's going to be an hour out of your day. But since we're talking about tools for busy people to exercise, will you talk a little bit about your private Facebook group? Because since I'm a part of it, I know that you are constantly offering these little mini workouts for people so that they can either join you and or see what they can do on their own, and that it doesn't have to take very long.
Yeah,
Tell us
definitely.
about your group.
Yeah. So I have a group that's called Inspired Growth Sisterhood. And this group is for moms, but I mean, I don't ever, put any woman out. I think women should just be on the mission together. I just get a lot of moms that really have told me they struggled. And because I was there, I have a passion for that. But again, get really, really busy. And so I started creating these 8 minutes. I say short, but crazy effective. Crazy effective. If it's 8 minutes, but you're working everything, workouts 2 to 3 times a week. And that way, when you are really busy, you can go in and do the 8 minute workout, but you have the option of pairing it and doing it twice. You can go and look at old ones and do a couple, or I'll say, do my 8 minute workout and then go for a walk for 15 minutes. So in this group, we encourage that fitness is a really big way that we build our self-love by taking the time to say, I am worth it. Because that's what fitness is saying. It's saying, I am worth it, and that I love the house that I live in, and I'm going to invest in the house that I live in. Because remember, we are not our bodies. Our bodies are still important, but our body is our house. Like, we have our house, but this is really our first house. This is our first house. And so in this group, we do these workouts, but it's also about just supporting and uplifting on the journey to learn to love ourselves more, to learn that we're not the same thing as Amber's group. It's about women on a mission together, that we don't need to do the journey alone. But part of building our love for ourselves, part of building confidence is movement, because there's so many benefits from movement, more than just, I want to fit in a pair of jeans. That's actually the last reason why I would be working out. That's the last reason. There's so many other benefits that's bigger than that.
Amazing. I couldn't agree more. I think that a lot of times we start working out for that reason, but when you realize how good you feel and all of the things that are happening physiologically to your body, just, it helps your body, it helps your mind, it helps your mood. And the side effect is oftentimes weight loss or more muscle or whatever, but it's just a side effect.
Exactly.
So yeah, I think that that's I love what you said there. So how would you, for people who may just be getting started or who go, I know a lot of women who like start working out and they'll go, they're on that 1 hour every day kind of thing, and then they just fall off and
Yeah.
then don't work out at all. So how do we stay motivated? Do you have any tools
Yeah.
to do that?
First, I want to say to first start working out, this is where we're saying to start creating with just a little bit of time at first, because once you start doing that, as you start doing a little bit more time, maybe it's 10 minutes, maybe it's 20 minutes, maybe it's 30 minutes. As you start falling in love with fitness and what it does for you, you're gonna want to increase your time. It's going to just naturally happen. You're going to want to do more time because you see how great and how much the benefits are for you. When I first started 80 pounds ago, 80 pounds ago,
Wow.
yeah.
Wow.
I just started out small. I remember going to kickboxing and I was like, if I black out, just shove me to the side and keep on with the class. But my motivation was realizing that motivation is a feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And if we live our whole lives just off feelings, this isn't not to acknowledge our feelings,
Right.
but motivation is a feeling. And so I wanted something bigger than a feeling, because I might be motivated to work out, but I might also be motivated to watch Netflix. Which one's gonna trump the other one? So you're
Right.
motivated. You are motivated to work out. You just might have something that you're motivated even more to do. So, so instead, I looked at like, what was my big why? I know people hear that a lot, but really, what is your big why? Why do you want to start working out? Why do you want to release that weight? Is it to play with your kids with more energy? Is it because diabetes runs in your family? So knowing your big why. And then I also say, what are my values in life? And I know what my really big values are. And one of my big values are, even though I wasn't always living by that, was health. Having a healthy life was something I valued. So I remember my big why. I remember that I value being healthy, and that's what gets me out the door. But to start doing it, we have to be really consistent by creating ourselves a schedule. And so I always tell people in the beginning, like, start for just 1 month. Write yourself down a fitness schedule. Be really specific. What day am I working out? What days? What time? Where am I going to work out at? And what kind of workout am I going to do? Because if you say, I'm going to work out tomorrow, you're like, okay, this morning, you're like, you know what? I'm going to work out in a couple hours. And then I'm going to work out after lunch. And then I'll work out when it cools down. And then, you know what? I'll just work out tomorrow. So making a schedule, even if it's only 10 minutes. And that way I say, if your girlfriend calls you up at 1 o'clock today and says, girl, let's go to lunch. But that's when you have planned to work out. You'll say to her, you know what? I can work out at 3. I can work out at noon, but I have already committed to myself to work out for 20 minutes at 1 o'clock. And that way you're not just wavering each day, because then we don't do it. We just don't. We're busy.
Yeah.
We're busy people. So if we miss that schedule, a lot of times it's not going to happen.
Yeah, I'm laughing over here because I have to throw my husband under the bus. Like, he is not a person who works out. He's very physical. He likes skiing and backcountry, and he likes to move and do like work, like man work. Like, let's
Yeah.
knock down this wall and put, doors in, that kind of stuff. But he's not a person that likes to work out. He used to like to run, and we hike every weekend, and we're hiking, and he's like, how do you feel about running? And I was like, wow, yes, let's do that. So we ran a little bit. He tells me that how good that felt. And every day this week, he's like, I think I'm going to run tomorrow. And
Yeah.
guess what? He hasn't run once. And he
Yeah.
tells my little dog, and I think my dog knows, that he's going to take her running. So
Yeah.
now every time he says that, I just go, promises, promises.
I love it.
Words I know of that song anyway, but you're so right. We don't do it. There has to be that commitment.
Yeah.
I am going to do this for this amount of time on this day.
Yeah. Write it down, put it on your fridge, because procrastination, it gets all of us, because procrastination is not us being lazy. We're not working out because we're lazy.
Right.
Instead, our body doesn't like to do anything that's really, or mind, that's uncomfortable.
Right.
And so when we're thinking about it, we start getting more uncomfortable and more uncomfortable instead of just saying, I'm not going to even think about it. It's just there. Like, this is what I'm doing at 10 a.m.
Yeah.
Instead of putting all this thought behind, like, I'm going to just work out tomorrow sometime, or I'm going to start my diet next week. Instead, it's like, this is what I'm going to do. This is when I'm going to start. And this, at least for 30 days. And
Yeah.
then you can change it after 30 days. You can, if like those workout times didn't work for you, if you didn't love that workout, like loving your workout is super, super important, then you can try something new. But
Absolutely.
start.
Oh, yeah. I think that that the process of getting started and structuring it seems harder, but it's actually a lot easier because of how much mental energy goes behind the not doing, and
Yeah.
you want to or think you should be doing it. There's a lot of just wasted energy on, I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it at 3. Oh, I didn't do it at 3. I'll do it at 5. Oh, I had, there's just always, it just gets pushed aside. And so I think it's actually harder to not have a structure. I think structure works really well for me too.
Yeah, Amber, I totally agree. Our body hates, our body resists, our mind resists.
Mhm.
But then it also reacts poorly to resistance. When we're resisting something that we need to do, something that's going to make us healthier, that's where we start getting more stressed. It makes depression bigger, it makes anxiety bigger, because we are in this push pull of knowing that we need this, but we're not doing it. And so, like you said, when we make that schedule and decide to stick to it, we're not giving ourselves as much room for resistance. Because, like you said, the more we're fighting against it and thinking about it, or the stress over not doing it,
Mhm.
it starts escalating. It just starts building and building and building, instead of just like, I'm going to just jump in. I'm not going to give it so much power. I'm going to just do.
Right. So, will you tell us, Rebecca, what you personally do to, stay fit and confident and healthy? What do you do? What's your routine?
So I have a morning routine, which I think is really, really important. Again, showing self-love, putting some time into ourselves. And so I like to start with at least a little bit of yoga first thing in the morning. I like to get up, I have my coffee, I sit in silence for at least 5 minutes. It's like my first thing to do if you have little ones, to get up a few minutes before them and just sit in silence. If they get up at 6, you get up at 5:30. I know it seems hard at first, but you are going to thank yourself to have that few minutes before they get up. But yeah, I like to do at least 15 minutes of yoga in the morning to start my day. And then at least 3 times a week where I want intense. For me, I like intense, but everyone's workout is different. So I like doing the push-ups and the burpees and squat thrusts and all that. That's my
Yeah.
routine. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 4:30 to 5:30. And then I have the workouts in my group. So that gives me little mini workouts through the week as well. But again, when you're starting somewhere brand new, it's about figuring out what you like, but you definitely want to start creating a routine.
Yeah.
It took a minute for me to fall in love with fitness. In the beginning, it was just in my mind, it was an obligation. And
Hmm.
I had to change it to, this is something I'm doing to show love to my body, not
Right.
something that I'm obligated to do for just for results. It was all results based, instead of making it like, this is something I'm doing because I love myself and I'm showing love to my body. I just
Right.
want to feel better. When we do everything off of results based, it's harder to stick to it.
Absolutely. I think it's a really good mindset to have, and realize that everything that we're doing right here in this moment is going to dictate what happens in our future. So if we want to sit around and watch Netflix and drink and smoke, you're not going to feel very good in 10 years. I
Yeah.
promise you.
Yeah. Yes.
So, yeah, I think that we do have to, and we're not good at this as humans because we really want that instant gratification, but we really do have to think about our future. Otherwise, we are going to feel terrible. So we kind of need to think this is a short term, bust your butt or whatever kind of workout you're doing for the long term benefits.
Yeah, I agree, Amber. Do something every day that your future body is going to thank you for. Like do something
Oh,
every day, and how you're eating and what you're doing. Even if you're having a treat, let
yeah,
it be because you decided and because that's something you're doing to honor you too, instead of it being something that's guilting you because you had that treat. So everything
yeah.
you're doing, let it be something that's your future body, your future self is going to thank you for. But when it comes to food and nutrition, I say your future body.
Yeah.
So
So what do you think the long-term consequences are if we don't, you know, commit to being nicer to ourselves, giving ourselves movement every day, learning how to love ourselves and how to love our body and how to move it. What do you think the long-term consequences of not doing that is?
yeah. Well, number one is just living a life without joy. I mean, living a life without joy, because if you feel yucky every day, if you have no energy, if you have brain fog, if you're constantly beating yourself up, if you're
Mhm.
constantly um, being feeling guilty all the time for what you're doing, you're going to live a life without joy. On
Mhm.
top of that, you're not going to have, maybe you live to 100, 110 years old, but what is your quality of life going to be? Because that's why we're working out again. Yes, it's sometimes to fit into those genes, but it's to have a good quality of life, to be able to enjoy it. No
Yeah.
matter what age, whether I'm 70 or 80 or 90, I want to be at my fittest version of me, not fittest version of someone else, the fittest version of me. And so no joy, a really low quality of life. So you might make it till 90 years old and you drink and you smoke, drink a lot and smoke and don't work out. But what's that quality going to look like? How happy are you going to be? And then what examples are we setting down that we want our children and grandchildren to do following behind us?
So you may have just already said it, but I want to ask you, what is your why?
My why is, well, yeah, for quality of life. I mean, that was really my big why. I was
Mhm.
tired of just existing. And
Mhm.
that's what I started believing. I started kind of throwing all my dreams out the window. I
Mm,
just started settling. I started saying, you know what? If who cares if I'm thicker? And who cares if I have the house that I want? And who cares if I'm not perfect? And I thought that that was a good thing. I thought that that was me loving myself more by doing that, by throwing all my dreams out the window. And I was really just starting to give up.
mm.
And then one day I was like, this is not really me. This is not the dreams that I had. You know, we believe that we dream when we're little girls. And then when we become adults, we're just supposed to throw all our dreams out the window. Like that's just fantasy. And bring the fantasy on, bring the
Right.
fantasy on. What do you really want in life? What is it going to take to get there? It doesn't matter what we have in life if we're not really as healthy as we can possibly be, because we all have our limitations, our best version of health, then how much are we going to enjoy that vacation or that house or whatever it is that you really want? So
Mhm.
quality of life, having joy, feeling good every single day. That was my big why. And then I had little whys that trickled to be able to set that example for my grandkids that I wasn't as much able to do for my kids when I was younger because I was in the struggle still. I want to be able to tell people not what I went through, but what I came through, that I came through it and now I'm on the other side.
I
But it
still
doesn't
can't believe
end.
you're a grandma.
Yeah, I am a grandma. Yes, I
I
started young. I started young.
when you
Yeah,
told me, I literally just was like,
yeah. I just
"What?"
spent the weekend with four beautiful little grandbabies.
Oh,
And
I
it
saw
was so
some
much, it was so
picture.
much fun. So
Oh, yeah, that's a good why.
yeah,
That's a really good why. So a couple weeks ago, you and I were talking, and you had talked about, and you, if you don't know them or any of them off the top of your head, don't worry about it. But I'm curious. You had talked to me about a tool that you had created that was like different keys to being more body positive, and maybe we've already hit on them. But I was thinking, since we have a little bit of time before we need to wrap up, if you have any of those tools in your head to be more body positive, you could share them with us.
yeah. Well, one of my kind of did share, it was about thinking about something that you love about yourself that has nothing to do with your body. So in my checklist, it's
Mhm.
write down and actually write it down, actually have it to reflect on. What is 10 things that you love about you that has nothing to do with your body, nothing to do with your
Mhm.
body? That's
Love
a
that.
really, really big one. And another big tool is, like I said, with the gratitude, thanking your body each day. I like to write in a gratitude journal every day, 10 things that I'm grateful for. And I
Mhm.
don't overthink it. I don't sit there, and try to think of like something that sounds really big and special. Like, what's the first 10 things? But make sure that like 2 or 3 of them are related to you. What are you grateful for? Maybe, I think, I have my C-section scar and I used to hate that. Instead, now I say thank you for carrying my baby successfully to health.
Yeah.
So instead of it being about what it did wrong to my body, I start thinking like thank you body for bringing them healthy into this world. Instead of criticizing my scar, I
Right.
now bless it and thank it for what it's done for me. So every day, think of little things that you could do. Every time you wrap your arms around your children, like that's a blessing that we have, that our bodies can do that, and how good it makes us feel and how good it makes them feel. So yeah, things that you can do, um, is thanking yourself. But I'm a big thing for write it down. I'm always saying write
Yeah.
it down, write it down, write it down. The more you're struggling to love yourself, the more you should be writing it down, and
Right.
pin it everywhere. Pin it on your fridge, pin it on your mirror, put it on your nightstand. Have a gratitude journal in your purse that you can just throughout the day when you're feeling down or you
Yeah.
start thinking negative, you can just start pulling out that gratitude journal and writing down what you're grateful for.
Yes, I love that.
I don't know if you've ever heard that it's really hard to be negative and in gratitude at the same time. It's almost impossible. So if
Yes,
you
it is
start,
impossible. It's
yeah,
proven in research. I was
yeah.
actually just gonna talk about that
I
because
just took that from you.
yes, no, I love it. This is yours. I'm so glad that you brought that up because sometimes people need that scientific piece to get them to do something.
Yeah, I
And
agree.
it really does, like they've done like brain mapping and showing like different parts of the brain that light up when you're in a state of gratitude and when you're feeling negative. And when you're in a state of gratitude, it the other part just shuts down. So
Yeah,
it's such a fantastic tool for when you are feeling bad or down or depressed or angry or anxious. You just pull out that journal and keep it with you at all times and just
yeah,
write. There
yeah,
is, on that same research note, um, there is research that shows that when you do pen to paper, it also lights up certain
yeah,
neurons in the brain that have to do with creativity and follow through.
exactly.
So
Yeah,
write it down. Couldn't agree more.
yeah. And we talk about these things and I see it because I used to think this too. You would see people say do gratitude journals or practice self-love. And you're just like, oh my gosh, it's just some fad thing that's all over social media. And it can be, but it
Mhm.
actually is really, really necessary. It's just a lot of times people are just giving us a basic list and they're not really getting into details about what we're doing when we do gratitude, what we're doing when we practice self-love, that really in the end we're getting to know ourselves better, because a lot of us grew up not really getting to know ourselves ever, like especially in our adult lives, getting
Mhm.
to know what we need. And that's can be a process if you spent your whole life focusing on what everyone else needs.
Right.
To take a minute, that's why I like to have a few minutes in the morning and just breathe and be like, what do I need today? Like before you're focusing on what the kids are going to need today, before you're focusing on what your partner needs today, before you're focusing on what your boss needs that day, like what do I need today?
Mhm.
And so I love doing that and just taking a minute to breathe. And then after you do that, you're writing down what you're grateful for. Because gratitude it turns the focus on what I don't have, what I don't have, what I don't have, to what I do have, what I do have, what I do have. Um, Physically or not. Maybe it's not something that you actually have that you can hold, but maybe it's just a beautiful view outside your window or a cup of coffee in your hand.
Mm. Absolutely.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
there really is so much to be grateful for. And when we're busy and on autopilot,
yeah,
um, it doesn't come natural for us to be thinking about the things that we are so grateful for and the things that we have, the people that we know, the relationships that we have. When we are on autopilot, all of that goes out the door. And when you can practice all of these tools that you have just shared, which I'm so grateful for. That's one thing that I'm grateful for, is that these practices are a huge part of my life. That's why I knew I loved you
Yeah.
immediately. These practices literally have the power to change your life. They
Yeah.
also have the power to change your thoughts, your beliefs, your actions. And so it really is just about the small steps that you've been talking about,
Yeah.
over this last hour here. It's baby steps, whether it is a short little workout or a short little meditation, or just writing 3 things down that you're grateful for. If we don't have time to do that, we've got bigger problems.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, I just love all of the tools that you've shared with us here. They're so amazing and so useful. And hopefully, everybody watching will at least choose one of these and
Yeah.
start.
And Amber, I want to say one more thing. Like the big thing too is, because this was me again. Let me know if this is ever you, is to think I've been working for a really long time to change my life, because maybe you found a new program or a new strategy and you did it for a week. Maybe you did it for 3 months and you're like, it didn't work. And so you stopped. And when you start investing in yourself, trying to undo years of beliefs that we've had around who we are, it really is an investment, and it takes time. I always compare it to like an athlete or a musician. No matter how good they are, no matter how confident we become, it's constantly practicing, it's constantly investing. It's not like a thing we could do for a week and then stop. If you start feeling better and then we stop, that's something that sabotages us in our health sometimes too. And I've been there lots of times. Like I've lost some of the weight, and so I start slacking off on what I've been doing to get there. It's constant all the time, putting love into you, putting love into what you need, especially when you start building that confidence, because then we just start sliding back. So we might think I've done everything, but maybe we did everything for a week. Maybe we did everything for 3 months and then
Right.
we quit. So it's constantly baby steps, giving yourself grace, but practice, practice, practice.
Right. Daily, right?
Yes,
It's not something that there's no there. We don't just get there like,
yes,
oh, now I'm fit so I can stop working out. No way. But
exactly.
now my diabetes went away so I can have cake again. No way. There is no there. When we're
Yeah,
there, we're dead, right? That's
yeah,
our last day on earth. So, and doing all of these things really helps us enjoy the journey and just makes us, I think, more vibrant and peaceful
yes,
people.
yes. And when you have moments that you slide back off track, because we always will, we're not perfect people, we'll never be perfect. I tell everyone that's the good news. Like when we accept that we're not perfect, then that's like really, really good news. It takes some of the pressure off. But the
Absolutely.
more you practice loving yourself, the more you practice taking care of yourself, the faster you get back on track. So
Mhm.
when you start sliding, you get back on faster,
Yeah.
because now like when I get off, like I'll say, maybe I put a couple pounds on, but instead of being where I was back in the day where I'd beat myself up and criticize myself and saying, girl, you know what to do. You
Mhm.
know what to do. Get back on track. You're human. You're perfectly imperfect. Just get right back on track. Before I would have beat myself up, put
Mhm.
myself down, and then just slid farther and farther and farther off track.
Yeah. Perfectionism is pathological.
Yeah.
I am a recovering perfectionist, and man, I feel so much more free. You'd
Yes.
think like, oh, everything's, perfect. So this is great. No, perfectionism puts pressure on people.
So much pressure.
Mm. Oh, well, love, I have one last question for you that's kind of a fun one. If you had 30 seconds, and you don't have to take the full 30 seconds, it could be a thought, but if you had 30 seconds to broadcast a message to the entire world, what would you say?
Oh, good one.
Mhm.
You are more than enough. You're not changing who you are because you're not enough. You're changing because you want to live your most joyous, happiest, fulfilled life, because you are enough right where you are. You woke up enough, you went to bed enough, you were born enough. Everything you're doing to make your life better is for your personal joy to be overflowing, not because you need to be a better person.
Mm, love it. You heard it, ladies. You are enough.
Thank you.
Oh, Rebecca, thank you. Thank you so much for taking the
Yeah.
time to come on and just share your story and your wisdom and all of these brilliant tools, these life-changing tools. I super value and appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This was so much fun, and I love we're right on the same thought process, and I know you're just connecting with women too, that we're all on this journey together. No more competition, inspiration. We'll inspire each other. I'll learn from
Absolutely.
you, you'll learn from me, together,
Absolutely.
together.
So tell us where you told us about your private Facebook group, but tell us a little bit more about where people can find you. If you have a website or social media, Facebook, Instagram, anywhere you want people to find you, where would that be?
Yeah, right now I would say the biggest places are just the Facebook group, Inspired Growth Sisterhood. It's a private Facebook group of beautiful, wonderful women there. And on Instagram, I'm still under my name, Rebecca Hannifan. But my Facebook group is probably the place where I say is just a really great place to connect with other fabulous, fabulous women on the mission together to get fit and healthy, love their life while connecting with one another.
Amazing. Inspired Growth Sisterhood.
Sisterhood,
All right.
Inspired Growth Sisterhood. Yeah, just type it in. It's right on Facebook. It'll pop right up. And it's just a
Beautiful.
fabulous group of women. I just they're my heart. They're my heart.
Oh, all right, love. Well, thank you again so much. I appreciate you, and I'll talk to you soon.
I appreciate you too. Thank you, Amber. Bye.
Bye. Mwah. So, Rebecca, if I end, hang on one second here. There we go. And